And as you exhale, sigh it out. Let's try that again. A little bit less self-consciousness and a little bit more catharsis. Take a full deep breath in. Exhale, sigh it out. You can flutter your eyes open. Hello. Keeping on this interactive trend, I want you to imagine a difficult moment that you've had in your adult life. I really want you to connect and visualize this challenging experience and try to connect to how you felt while you were in the thick of it. And with that moment in your mind, I want you to think about what life skills you needed, or maybe wish that you had, to overcome that experience. Try to think of at least two. And now I want you to think about where you learned those skills. For your challenging moment, maybe you thought about immense obstacles like losing your housing after being laid off from your job, or trying to navigate the deep sadness of losing somebody that you love. Or maybe you thought about more daily struggles like your boss who degrades you every day in front of your coworkers or being rejected on a date. I'd like you all to stand up if you're able. I'm going to read you a set of skills that we need to navigate the world, to navigate difficult moments. If you were taught this skill in your college classes or whatever other education you went to, take a seat. So again, if you were explicitly taught this skill in school, sit down. Asking for help. Resolving conflict. Self-advocacy. Financial management and financial literacy. Effective communication. Stress management. Self-soothing or self-regulation. Vulnerability. Resilience. Self-awareness. Self-compassion. So for those of you who are still standing, look around, right? There's a fair amount of you who weren't taught these skills. You can all take a seat now. For those of you who sat down while I was talking about the other ones, please find me after and tell me where you went to school, right? I never learned these things, right? And for those of you who were standing, you didn't either. We've established that many of the skills that we need to navigate the world around us, we aren't being taught in school. The students of today are the future of our world. And I'm going to make a bold statement and say that our higher education system generally fails to prepare students to navigate the real demands of real life. So what are we teaching then? And who decided that that's what we should be teaching? And something that I always think about is, when did they decide that? Because our students today are strikingly different than they were 30 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, right? The world is different than it was 5 years ago. And yet much of our higher education system looks the same as it did 50 years ago. I want to give you just a little bit of context, a snapshot of the higher education system that I work at, a public institution here in Chicago, where 38% of our students are first-generation college students. 60% are Pell Grant eligible, which means that they come from families where the total family income is $50,000 or less, and the majority of people who receive these grants, the total family income is $20,000 or less. 85% of our students are commuters, which means they come from outside the city into Chicago every day to attend school. 68% identify as non-white. They're managing multiple jobs, and some of them are even supporting their families financially. On a larger scale, outside of my institution, 63% of students in the US have reported substantial anxiety, overwhelming anxiety within the last 12 months. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, and 43 million Americans have college student loan debt. The pressures of today are substantial: economic, environmental, violence, political. Our mental health statistics are evidence to prove that we need to do more to support our students. So knowing that, why aren't we teaching students what we know that they need to succeed in the world? Institutions exist ideally to serve the people who are utilizing them. And our current higher education system is not serving our students of today, and it's certainly, without changes, not going to serve our students of tomorrow. Higher education is assumed to be a sort of success currency in America. So the more degrees that you attain, the more success that you can achieve. So we have inflated the societal value of higher learning, but by not teaching people what we know they need to succeed, we have shrunken the personal and transformative value of higher education, which means that for many students, aside from receiving a credential, college is a massively expensive but disappointedly empty pursuit that is more likely to guarantee a lifetime of debt than a future of success and health. And I didn't go to business school, but I think the formal word for what they call this is a ripoff. Yeah? But really, if you think about the cost-benefit analysis of that, and I'm not here to knock universities. I'm fully aware of my own privilege as somebody who has been able to attain higher education and as a white woman who's employed by one. I know that I've achieved much of my success because of the alphabet soup that's after my name. I know that having doctor in front of my name has given me access to tables that I didn't know even existed before. And I believe deeply in the value of higher education when it's equitable, relevant, and holistic. So here we are, it's 2019, our students are in mounds of debt to receive an undergrad diploma that doesn't necessarily guarantee them career or health. I'm not here to say either that college is useless, but more that it's imperative that right now we reimagine what it means to provide a college education and rebuild the entire institution. We need to do better at understanding the current needs of our current students. We need to transform our role as educators and educational institutions. We need to rethink what we teach, how we teach it, and how we assess it. We need to prioritize mental health and well-being in a way where it's truly integrated into our institutions. We need to find more creative ways to engage our students and connect what they're learning in the classroom to what they're really going to be doing in the real world. And we need to allow people to get an education without going into debt. So, what do? I don't think that there's a simple answer to this question, but as somebody who went to undergrad, 2 graduate programs, and now teaches college students, I want to share a little bit about what I wish was different. If the education genie came to my door and granted me wishes, my first wish would be that college is free. So when we eliminate financial barriers to accessing higher education, we can increase equity. But beyond that, reducing the financial burden makes space for exploration. So this economic freedom gives students permission to indulge their curiosity. Without all of these immense financial pressures, students can explore all the different things that they want to learn, and they can actually receive an education. My second wish would be that we broadened our scope, our idea of what education is. So we tend to specialize as we get older. We learn more and more about less and less. And as a society, we revere specialists for their great knowledge and their expertise, and we tend not to value generalists or multi-potentialites for their many interests and the applicability of their skills. But students haven't explored. They haven't had an opportunity to learn about their values, about their strengths, about their interests. And yet we ask them to choose a major when they're 17 or they're 18 years old. Did you know who you were when you were 17 or 18 years old? I went to graduate school twice, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. We need to stop funneling these students into these narrow career trajectories and instead encourage them to learn more about themselves and more about the world. My third wish would be that we explicitly taught skills for mental health and well-being in our educational institutions. So again, explicitly teach coping skills, not hope that by chance they have a hard experience that teaches them resilience, right? I teach a class called Promoting Well-Being that I created when I was a graduate student. The class gives students an opportunity to learn about, practice, and reflect on mental health and well-being skills. And for many of my students, this is the first time that they've talked about feelings, about asking for help, about any type of coping, about effective communication. We can't afford to not teach people these things. And beyond that, it becomes an issue of equity. So students are coming to our institutions from all different life backgrounds, right? They represent all the different structural inequities that exist in the world, and they show up at our institutions, and it would not be equitable for us to assume that they had the opportunity to learn these skills elsewhere. Which means that if we want to provide equitable education, we need to teach everyone these skills that they need to be able to succeed. My fourth wish, I know genies usually only give you 3, but I made up my genie and she gives me more. So my fourth wish is igniting curiosity. Right now I'm reading Rising Strong by Brené Brown, trying to absorb all of her genius into my body by osmosis. And she talks about a study where we actually can see that the way that the brain activity changes when we're curious, right? So our neurochemistry changes when we're more curious. It allows us to learn more and to retain more information. And our students today do not have the time or the energy to be curious. When I was watching earlier the a cappella singers, I couldn't help but think how unfortunate it would be if students didn't have opportunities to do that. And for my students, they don't have that opportunity. If it's not academic, they don't have time for it. So we need to make it academic. We are overburdening students' cognitive capacities, their executive functioning, even their physical bodies. But we're failing to ignite their curiosity and their creativity. And so they are simultaneously experiencing burnout and boredom. And that burnout is not just specific to students. It's happening to faculty and to staff, which is what brings me to my next idea, which is supporting the well-being of faculty and staff. Hello, my name is Leah Goodman. I am 28 years old. I teach 6 times per week at a public university, and I am exhausted. We need to support our faculty, our staff, and our administrators. We need to value and invest in their physical, emotional, social, and financial well-being. Without teachers, there are no classes. Without staff, there are no services. Their health, our health, is integral to student health. And that connection between our staff and our students is what brings me to my final point, my final wish, is breaking down the barriers between students and staff and faculty. So the way to reach our students today is not by only hiring white, straight men in tailored blazers with outdated lecture slides who reveal nothing about their personal lives. Don't get me wrong, I love a blazer. But we cannot connect with students if we don't hire people who represent them. So hire the queer, disabled professor with tattoos, promote women of color to powerful leadership positions, encourage faculty and staff to self-disclose. Students don't learn to be courageous and vulnerable and brave from some distant collegiate facade. Students learn how to show up by watching how we show up. The most common piece of feedback that I get at the end of my course evals every semester sounds something along the lines of, I would have thought that the person who teaches this class would have it all together, and it makes me feel so much better to know that even she struggles. And do I struggle? I didn't think I had any more tears to cry last week. It's not unprofessional to self-disclose that you're human, and it gives students permission to be human too. And as I thought about all these wishes, all these things that I really want to be different, I was conceptualizing it almost as an educational utopia, some sort of distant dreamland. And then I stepped back from it for a second and started to realize that all of these considerations can be acted on now. And for the future of our world, I would argue that they have to be. Thank you.